The Sony A95K QD-OLED is worth looking into in 2022, but is it going to be worth your purchase at the end of the day? In this video, we're going to try and find out all of that for you and hopefully answer all the questions that you have about the 2022 Sony A95K QD-OLED. As usual, I will have the link for the product in the description below that we're talking about today, as well as all the other TVs I've talked about this year. So if you're buying a TV, please do use my affiliate link. When you do so, it will help out the channel, and I greatly appreciate that, so thank you. Also, I'm really happy to announce we just hit 20K subscribers on this channel, so thank you guys so much for that. To celebrate, I'll be doing a Q&A video, so if you have any questions that you want answered directly in that video, leave them in the comments and you'll see them in the video. Alright, so with that out of the way, let's get into the A95K, and we have to start with the amazing picture quality. I think that's what everybody wants to hear about, is the picture quality that much better than your traditional OLED TV? And the answer to that question is absolutely. It really is better than your traditional OLED. The colors that you can get out of the QD-OLED technology, you just cannot get out of the WRGB OLED. So remember that the QD OLED is quantum dot OLED, and when you think about a quantum dot TV, you're usually thinking of a QLED. And the way that I think of the quantum dot OLED is like it's a combination of some of the best of what you get from an LCD TV and some of the best of what you get from your traditional OLED TV. And you put those together, it's almost like you're having the best of both worlds. And you can say the same thing for the S95B, which also uses a QD OLED. And so that's the biggest thing here for a lot of people is it a huge jump over the S95B? Because the price tag would indicate that it is. However, it's not a huge jump. It is going to be better in the processing just a little bit. And also there's going to be some small fine details that you think look better on the A95K. The color reproduction is also more natural out of the A95K. It does feel like it is more spot on to what colors should look like. And the S95B is a little bit more on the vivid side of things. So it really does depend on what you're looking for at the end of the day. It is possible to get a similar look out of both of those TVs. The A95K and the S95B are so close. And when I did the comparison, it was only small things that set them aside. And would I pay the difference between an S95B and an A95K? In most situations, no. The only time I could really justify spending more on an A95K is if it was for that luxury TV purchase, that TV that I know I'm going to keep for the next 5-6 years, and I don't care how much money I spend on it. I just want something that looks really good in a living room. That's maybe where I would take the A95K over the S95B. Because there's no doubt about it, the build quality is going to be better on the A95K. In terms of the weight, in terms of the way that the structure is, it's just a better all-around built TV. So yes, you do give the edge to the A95K for pretty much everything when it comes to production quality, when it comes to quality assurance, and the picture quality, you still give the advantage to the A95K as well. Because it's just as bright as the S95B, and it looks just as good as the S95B, if not better. And the things that you have to remember with the A95K and the S95B is when I tell you they're almost the same TV, they're almost the same TV. And the reason for that is because they're using the same exact panel. They're using the Samsung Display Quantum Dot OLED panel. So that is going to be why these two TVs are fairly similar. Not only that, the philosophy that Samsung uses for their processing is very similar to what Sony does with their processing. So you'll see things like fine details look fairly similar on both TVs. But again, you give the edge to Sony because they do have these extra processing enhancements that you can actually unlock yourself with things like reality creation. So you have more settings adjustments that you can tweak to bring out more detail with the Sony TV, while the Samsung is kind of baked in, is what you get. One thing I have to highlight as a plus for this TV, and really I do this for every Sony TV, and that is the settings and adjustments. There are a lot of different settings and adjustments that you can tweak towards your liking that I absolutely love, and I love how snappy and just intuitive it is. It is really easy to get into, and the menu system is probably the best for any TV. One of my favorite things about Sony TVs is how clean it can make images look. There are no better TVs when it comes to cleaning up the image, like the smooth gradation on color banding. You really hardly ever notice color banding on a Sony TV. And one of the things that I've always seen when it comes to either looking at the A80J or looking at this A95K is how clean Netflix shows look in comparison to LG. There's something to be said about the way that Sony handles some of the shows, and you may or may not like some of the film grain that gets added to these modern shows. I personally think it's a little too much sometimes, so I do appreciate what Sony does to clean it up. Now, you can disable some of these features and it won't clean up the film grain as much, but even with this stuff off, you do still see less film grain on a Sony TV than on an LG TV. So while it may not be replicating the director's intent, I do feel like personally it is a better image overall and just something more pleasant to watch in my opinion. But again, please remember, this is just my opinion on this topic. You may have a different view altogether. Okay, so next let's get into the features of this TV. So the A95K does feature a really unique stand where you could either put it where it's leaning backwards, or you're going to have it standing straight up, and then the stand is going to be in the front. Now, a lot of people are not going to like the way the stand design is if they have a soundbar, because there's absolutely no way to feature a soundbar with this stand, so please keep that in mind. You're going to have to get a separate mount, or you're going to have to buy a mounted stand in order to use a soundbar. But if you're not worried about that, it does look really good on the tabletop. It almost looks like the TV itself is coming out of the stand that you put it on. I think that is awesome. And one of my favorite designs that I've seen thus far from Sony, so big props to them on the design. I know a lot of people don't like it, but I love it. Now, I really have to touch on sound quality really quickly. Usually I don't touch too long on sound quality with TV speakers, but man, the sound quality on this TV is tremendous. It's really good. And if you're going to want to beat it, you definitely got to get a soundbar with a subwoofer or a dedicated sound system with a subwoofer, or else you're just going to not really feel a difference. Because I compared the Sonos Beam to the A95K, and honestly, the Beam was just slightly better than the A95K, and then there were some elements within the sound that I actually liked the A95K a little bit better than the Beam. The other big feature that, a lot of people are going to talk about with this TV is the heatsink, much like the A90J. Now, I have to say that when you're looking at it compared to a QD-OLED without a heatsink, side by side, there is not really any difference. When you look at the A80J versus the A90J, you see a jump. When you look at the C2 versus the G2, you see a jump. But when you look at the S95B next to the A95K, it looks fairly similar and you really don't see a difference. So really, you are getting an advantage with the efficiency long term. But other than that, you really can't see the advantage. And that's kind of a disappointment, seeing that with the A90J, I did see a difference, and the G2, I absolutely saw a difference. I was hoping there was going to be a little bit more that the A95K could get squeezed out of it from Sony, but that wasn't the case, and it looks just the same as the S95B in most cases. So I told you how good the picture settings are, and I told you how good the picture quality is. Let's move on to something I know a lot of people do on their TVs, and that is gaming. And when it comes to gaming, there is a really good gaming experience on the A95K, and I've made a whole video about gaming on the A95K if you want to check that out. But let me briefly touch on what I like and what I don't like about the A95K when it comes to gaming. So when it comes to the picture quality, the image quality of gaming, the A95K picture quality with gaming just is the best, and there is no beating it. And when it comes to the brightness levels, it is just as bright as something like an S95B if you just tweak a few settings. Like the tone mapping, if you switch that to brightness preferred, you're getting a very similar experience to what you're getting with the S95B. So with the colors, you might want to bump them up a little bit in their default game mode, because they aren't going to be as vivid as the S95B if that's what you're looking for. However, if you are looking for some more natural colors, I think the colors out of the box are fantastic for game mode. Alright, moving on to the things that I don't like about gaming on the A95K, and that's going to be the gaming features, or really lack thereof gaming features. So with only one HDMI 2.1 port available to you, other than the one that's tied to the EARC port, you really only have one available port if you're using a soundbar. If you're not using a soundbar and you're using the onboard TV sound, you do have two ports available to you, but still you want to see a TV that is equipped with four HDMI 2.1 ports, because that's sort of the standard these days for a premium TV, and for a TV to cost this much but still not have those features is kind of a disappointment. The other disappointment with gaming is going to be the lack of gaming features altogether. So yes, there is VRR on the TV, which is nice to see it ship with, but when it comes to the extra features that the Sony and the LG TVs have, there's nothing like that on the Sony TVs. So in the future, we would love to see some extra features be added to Sony TVs to compete in the gaming side of things, because they make really good picture quality for game mode. It's just that the actual features coming out of these TVs are pretty lackluster. Alright, so let's talk about motion and sports really quickly. So when it comes to motion, I think that the motion is the best of any TV that I've seen yet. I really like what Sony does with their motion processing. There's a lot of fine tuning that you can do with the motion, and I really do enjoy what it looks like with sports. So Sony, yeah, they are top of the line when it comes to motion. I think if you compare this to the S95B, I think the S95B does tend to have a little bit more soap opera effect, and that's harder to get rid of than the Sony, which I think is easier to fine tune and get rid of that soap opera effect. So it really does depend on what you like with motion at the end of the day. When it comes to motion, like I mentioned before, it is very subjective. So how does it look with sports overall? I mean, I think that, you factor in the motion, that looks really good with sports, but when you're talking about watching broadcast television on the A95K, I don't think there's a better TV. The processing that goes into these modern Sony TVs are top of the line. The XR processor does such a good job with upscaling, so little low resolution elements are cleaned up very nicely, and it almost sometimes will look like you're watching a 4K broadcast, even though you're watching just a 1080p broadcast. Even some of the live broadcasts that you watch from the streaming services like Amazon Prime and Peacock, I thought that the sports broadcasts on those with the A95K were so clean, and I was very happy with what I saw. So if you're looking for a premium TV for sports in that 55-65 inch range and you absolutely are sold on QD OLED, A95K is not a bad way to go. The S95B looks good with sports as well, but it does not clean up as good with the upscaling as the A95K, so keep that in mind. And I also think that the motion is going to be better on the A95K, but again, motion is very subjective. So the biggest question on everybody's mind is it worth it? Is this a TV that people should go out and buy? I mean, there's no doubt about it. It's a great TV, and it is probably the best TV you can buy. With that said, I struggle with who this TV is really going to be recommended for at the end of the day. If it is considered a luxury purchase, you have to think that the people that have enough money to buy this might have a bigger space, and they can afford something bigger than a 65-inch to put in their room. And if you can get something bigger than a 65-inch, and even if it's just a regular WRGB OLED, that's going to be a better purchase than a 65-inch QD OLED. I'd much rather have a 77-inch OLED or a 75-inch or an 85-inch QLED TV than a QD OLED 65 or 55-inch TV. When you put it up against the S95B, there is not that big of a difference, and you look at the price tag side by side and you don't understand why the A95K costs so much more. Yes, the build quality is better, but when it comes to picture quality, it's not a huge jump. And so that's why I think most people should be buying the S95B if they're looking at QD OLEDs. So there you have it. I think the A95K is the best 4K TV on the market right now. It's just, I don't know if it's the right value for everybody. So you got to look into that yourself and decide that. Hopefully this video helps you make that decision, and if you have any other questions, feel free to leave them in the comments. If you guys enjoyed this video, please hit the like button, consider subscribing for more content, and check out my other videos right here like the side-by-side with the S95B and also the S95B full review, which is coming soon if it's not up already. Thank you guys so much for watching. Have a great day, and I will see you in the next one.